High school has a strange way of deciding your worth before you ever get a chance to prove yourself. Back then, the loudest kids were the popular ones and the quiet ones. The kids who didn't have designer shoes or famous last names were labeled losers. And once that label stuck, it followed you for years long after graduation. So when Jason's old classmates invited him to a reunion after 7 long years, he knew exactly what they expected. The same broke, awkward kid they used to laugh at. What they didn't expect was a helicopter landing on the mansion lawn, or Jasonstatham stepping out of it in a tailored suit, every single bully's jaw dropping as the class loser walked toward them like the whole world belonged to him. Before we continue, thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful episode. Your support truly means the world to us. Reunions were supposed to be about nostalgia, warm laughs, yearbook memories, bad haircuts, and old crushes you secretly hoped would still remember your name. But not this one. This reunion was built on something uglier. Because for Jasonstatham, the kid they used to call Waste of Space Jason, Janitor J, or the loser with no future, the invitation wasn't a gesture of goodwill. It was bait, a setup, a joke that the popular kids crafted with the same cruelty they once perfected in the high school hallways. And the worst part, they didn't expect him to show up. They expected him to crawl back into whatever tiny, miserable life they assumed he still lived. But life has a strange way of rewriting stories, especially when people write you off too early. Jason was sitting in his office, on the 34th floor of a private investment building overlooking the Thames, when the email popped up. Subject: 10-year reunion. Hope you can make it, Jason. From Melissa Granger. Melissa, the ringleader, the prom queen with a heart frozen somewhere between arrogance and perfume. The girl who once told him, in front of the whole cafeteria, "People like you don't become anything. They just clean up after people like me." He had forgotten her voice, but reading her name brought it all back. Jason leaned back in his leather chair, one he bought, not borrowed, and let the email load. The message was short, almost suspiciously sweet. "Hey Jason, long time. We'd love to see you again. Everyone's meeting at the Longwood Country Estate for the reunion banquet. Please come. It wouldn't be the same without you." Even through the screen, he could smell the sarcasm. Longwood, the most luxurious country estate in the region. High class, high money, high everything he supposedly never had. He could almost hear them snickering while typing it. "Let's invite him. It'll be hilarious. He's probably still broke. Imagine he actually comes. We'll have front row seats to the train wreck." Jason exhaled, but surprisingly, not in anger, in amusement, because they would never expect the truth. The truth that the class loser quietly became one of the most successful private investors in Europe. That his company purchased 2 startups in Silicon Valley. That he lectured once at Cambridge. That Forbes had contacted him twice for interviews he politely declined. They didn't know any of that. And that ignorance, it gave him a chance to do something beautiful. To walk back into the lion's den on his own terms. He clicked accept invitation. Not out of revenge, but because he wanted to look in the eyes of every person who said he would fail and show them. Not with words, not with anger, not with boasting, but by simply being there. 10 years earlier, Jasonstatham walked the halls of Longwood High with a backpack held together by duct tape and hope. His father was a mechanic who worked 3 jobs. His mother cleaned houses. Jason spent most evenings mopping the floors at the old boxing gym just to afford training. He wasn't stupid. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't violent. He was just invisible. Unless someone needed a target. Unless someone needed to feel superior. Unless someone wanted entertainment. There were days he pretended the whispering didn't hurt. There were days he pretended the shove in the hallway was accidental. There were days he pretended he didn't hear. Jason, why do you even come to school? You'll be pumping gas for the rest of your life. Just drop out. The world doesn't need another loser. One day, during senior year, he collapsed into a cafeteria chair after cleaning the lunchroom to pay off a school fee. His shirt was stained with mop water. His hands still smelled like bleach. He was exhausted. That's when Melissa Granger, with her gold curls, perfect smile, and venom wrapped in lip gloss, walked up to him. She leaned forward, loud enough for everyone to hear. Jason, we took a vote, and we decided you're officially the most likely to be a nobody. Her friends exploded in laughter. Jason held back tears until he got home. He promised himself then that he would outgrow the weight of their words. And he did. Brick by brick. Fight after fight. Failure after failure. He built something no one could imagine. The morning of the reunion arrived with a sky painted in soft gold. Jason woke early, stretched, and threw on one of his tailored black suits. Crisp. Simple. Sharp. Not flashy, he didn't need flashy. He checked his watch. His pilot would be arriving soon. Yes, pilot. He could have driven. He could have taken a luxury car or something discreet. But for once in his life, he wanted the entrance to reflect truth. Not revenge, not arrogance, truth. He wasn't the boy they mocked anymore. He wasn't the shadow behind the mop bucket. He had earned his way out of their expectations. So he chose the helicopter. Not to embarrass them, but to erase any doubt in their minds that they ever truly understood him. The thrum of blades broke the calm morning air. The helicopter lowered onto the private field behind his estate. His pilot, Tom, waved him over. Big day, Tom asked, grinning. Jason shrugged lightly. A conversation I should have had 10 years ago. Tom nodded with a knowing smile. No fear. Jason smirked. Mate, I'm Jasonstatham. The only thing I fear is bad coffee. Tom laughed. Then let's get you there. The estate was enormous, marble pillars, fountains shaped like swans, expensive cars lining the entrance like jewelry on velvet. Inside the ballroom, the reunion was already buzzing. Old classmates mingled in tuxedos and dresses. Wine glasses clinked. Photos were taken. People laughed. People whispered. Melissa Granger stood at the center of a table full of former cool kids. She wore a gold evening dress as bright as her ego. Is he actually coming? She giggled, sipping champagne. No chance, replied Mark, the ex-football star with more muscle than sense. He probably still can't afford a cab. Laughter erupted. That invitation was the funniest idea we've had in years, Melissa said. Just imagine Jason walking in here with his thrift store clothes. Before she could finish, someone pointed toward the window. Oh, guys, what's that sound? The distant thump-thump-thump of helicopter blades grew louder. People stepped outside. The sky was streaked with sunset orange. Wind whipped through dresses and suits as the helicopter descended onto the estate's lawn. The crowd gasped. Who the hell is that for the reunion? Did someone hire an entertainer? The helicopter door opened. A figure stepped out. Tall, confident, sharp suit, determined stride. Jasonstatham. For a moment, no one spoke. No one breathed. Melissa's mouth fell open. Mark dropped his drink. Someone whispered, "That's not the loser we remember." No, it was. Jason walked forward, his expression unreadable. The crowd instinctively created a path for him. He didn't smirk. He didn't gloat. He didn't brag. He simply walked with the ease of a man who no longer lived under anyone's shadow. Jason, croaked Melissa, stepping forward with trembling excitement. Wow, I didn't think you'd actually show. Jason looked around the ballroom, as if revisiting a childhood ghost. I'm here, he said quietly, just like you asked. Mark stumbled into the conversation, forcing a laugh. Jason, man, look at you, wearing real clothes and everything. Jason raised an eyebrow. Real clothes, he repeated gently. You sound surprised. Mark swallowed. The comment had slipped out before he could filter it. "Well, you know," Mark stammered, "you used to be, a loser," Melissa blurted, giggling nervously. "We used to call you that all the time." Jason studied her. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. Just clarity. "I remember," he said softly. The room fell silent. Melissa fidgeted. "But look at you now," she said quickly. "Fancy suit, you clean up well. What do you do? Security, driver?" Mark snapped his fingers. "He's probably a bodyguard." Jason nodded slowly. "I protect a lot of things," he said, "just not the way you think." Mark laughed, unaware of the double meaning. In the corner of the room, someone whispered, "Why did he come in a helicopter? Who does that?" And another voice answered, "Someone with money." More whispers. "Is he rich? Is he famous? Did we miss something?" Yes. They missed everything. Melissa leaned in again, desperate to regain control. "Jason, honestly, how did you even afford to get here?" Jason smiled faintly. "I'll explain," he said, "but not yet. Let's eat first." The uncertainty on their faces was priceless. He wasn't here to embarrass them. But he also wasn't here to hide. The banquet began, and everyone took their seats. Jason quietly accepted a seat near the front, the kind usually reserved for successful alumni. Melissa quickly corrected that. "Oh no, no," she laughed loudly. "Jason, you sit at the back table. We organized the seating by life achievements." Her smile was sugar-coated poison. Jason stared at her calmly. "Is that so?" "Of course," she said proudly. "Doctors and CEOs in the front, everyone else in the middle, and well, people like you in the back." People like him. The same line. The same cruelty. After all these years, she hadn't changed. He didn't move. Instead, he sat right where he was. Melissa frowned. "No, Jason, that seat is for important people." Jason rested his hands together. "Then it's mine." A murmur rippled through the room. Melissa's eyes narrowed. "Jason, don't be ridiculous." Mark crossed his arms, puffing his chest. "Move, mate, you're not in this category." Jason looked at him, tilting his head slightly. "Oh, and what category is that?" Mark scoffed. "The successful ones." Jason smiled politely. "You might be surprised." But before they could respond, before anyone could force him up, the event organizer walked onto the stage and tapped the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Before dinner, we'd like to honor a special alumnus." Melissa perked up. "Oh, that's me," she whispered to her friends. The organizer continued. "This year we discovered that one of our former students achieved extraordinary success, quietly, without recognition, without boasting." People glanced around. Melissa grinned proudly. The organizer smiled. "And we are thrilled to announce that alumnus is." The drumroll of whispers filled the room. Melissa smoothed her dress. Mark straightened his tie. The organizer finished. "Jasonstatham." And the room exploded. Melissa's wine glass shattered against the floor. Mark's jaw dropped so hard it nearly hit the table. Gasps. Choking sounds. Hands over mouths. Eyes wide with disbelief. Jason simply sat back in his chair. Calm. Silent. Watching their entire world shift upside down. Jason didn't stand right away. He let the words hang there for a moment, floating over the banquet tables, echoing off the chandeliers. Jasonstatham. The nobody. The janitor's son. The kid they voted, most likely to be forgotten. Now the name sounded different on everyone's lips. The organizer gestured eagerly from the stage. "Jason, please join us up here." Jason exhaled slowly and rose from his chair. As he walked toward the podium, he could feel dozens of eyes searing into his back, some filled with shock, some with confusion, some with the first flicker of shame. He didn't walk faster. He didn't slow down. He moved like a man on neutral ground, not seeking applause, not chasing vindication, just present. When he stepped onto the stage, The organizer shook his hand with both of his. "Thank you for coming, Jason," he said into the microphone. "To be honest, when we emailed you, we didn't know if you'd respond. You've been hard to track." Jason offered a small smile. "I learned to keep a low profile," he replied. A few strained laughs bubbled around the room. The organizer turned to the audience. For those who don't know, Jasonstatham started his own investment firm just 5 years after graduation. His company has since funded over a dozen startups, supports multiple charities, and recently pledged a substantial sum to our school's scholarship program. Another ripple of shock. Melissa whipped her head toward Mark. "Did you know about this?" she hissed. Mark just stared at the stage, stunned into silence. Jason glanced at the tables, faces pale, eyes wide, then back at the organizer. "I appreciate the introduction," he said quietly, "but I'm not here for a trophy." The organizer, still smiling, stepped aside. "Still," he said, "we'd be honored if you said a few words." Jason stared at the microphone. For a brief second, he saw his 17-year-old self reflected in the medal. The kid who never got asked to say anything on a stage, unless it was to apologize for a fight he didn't start. Now those same people waited to hear him speak. He placed both hands on the podium. The room fell into a hush so complete, even the waiters paused. 10 years ago," Jason began, his voice low but steady, "if you told me I'd ever stand behind a microphone in this room, I'd have laughed." A few people shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't the kind of student anyone expected to see here," he continued. "I wasn't captain of any team. I wasn't top of the class. I worked nights. I often smelled like bleach because I cleaned the school to pay off fees." He looked straight at Melissa and her table. "And I was called a loser, a waste of space, a nobody." The words hit the room like stones dropped in still water. No one laughed this time. "But here's the thing," Jason said. "You don't forget words like that, you carry them. They sit in your chest. They show up when you're alone at night, when you're thinking about applying for a job, starting a business, asking for a chance." He paused. "I carried them for years." In the second row, one of the quieter former classmates, a guy named Daniel who had never joined in the bullying but never stopped it either, lowered his head. Jason continued. "After graduation, I worked 3 jobs. Garage by day, warehouse by night, security on weekends. I slept in a room that was barely bigger than the lockers you shoved me into." Mark flinched visibly. "But I also read," Jason said, "everything I could get my hands on. Books about money, psychology, business patterns. I looked at the world like a chessboard and thought, if the rules were written by people, then the rules can be changed." From the back of the room, someone whispered, "I had no idea." "Of course you didn't," Jason said without venom, "because no one asked. You saw the cover and decided you knew the book." He let that sink in. 5 years ago, I took every penny I had and invested in a small company everyone else thought was ridiculous. 2 years later, it sold for more than anyone predicted. I reinvested. I built my firm. I kept my head down. I stayed away from rooms like this." He looked around the gilded hall, the polished wood, the gold trim, the glittering glass. "Because I thought they would always belong to people like you, and never people like me." A pin could have dropped and echoed. "But recently," he said, "I realized something. That belief was just another lie I carried from school. Another story written by the people who laughed the loudest, not the people who listened the deepest." He leaned slightly closer to the microphone. "So when you sent that invitation," he said softly, "I decided I wasn't going to stay outside anymore." Melissa couldn't stand it any longer. She sprang to her feet, clapping loudly. "Wow," she exclaimed, forcing enthusiasm. "Jason, that's amazing. See, guys, we always knew you had potential." The lie was so blatant, several people actually winced. Jason looked at her calm, almost sympathetic. "You knew, did you?" he asked. "Of course," she said, laughing nervously. "We were just teasing when we called you things. You know how kids are." Jason let the silence answer her. Her smile faltered. "We were all friends in our own way," she added weakly. "You can't seriously still be upset about a few jokes from high school." Now there it was. The classic defense. It was just a joke. You're too sensitive. You should be over it by now. Jason considered her for a long moment. Melissa, he said finally, his voice gentle but unwavering, a joke is something everyone finds funny. If one person laughs while someone else dies inside, that's not a joke. That's cruelty with a punchline. The words cut sharper than any insult. Melissa slowly sank back into her chair. Mark spoke up, his voice rough. Look, man, we were kids. We didn't know any better. Jason turned his gaze on him. Maybe, but you know better now. Mark swallowed. And here's the truth, Jason added. I'm not here for revenge. I didn't arrive in a helicopter just to rub success in your faces. Someone in the back muttered, could have fooled me. Jason heard it and actually smiled. I arrived in a helicopter, he said, because that's how I travel for work. I didn't change my life to impress you. I changed my life because I refused to let your opinion be the final verdict. Near the window, an old teacher wiped at her eyes. Jason took a breath and let his tone soften. There's another reason I came tonight, he said. It's not just about me. He looked toward the far right corner of the hall. There, at a small round table near the emergency exit, sat three people who hadn't spoken much all night, former classmates who had never been part of the elite group. One wore a second-hand suit. Another kept anxiously adjusting her borrowed dress. The third, a woman with short hair and tired eyes, clutched her handbag like it was the only thing she owned. Jason remembered them. He remembered how Mark's group used to snicker at their thrift store clothes, their cheap shoes, their quiet presence. He gestured toward their table. Back in school there were others like me, he said. Kids you barely noticed, except when you needed to feel superior. Some of them are here tonight. Some of them didn't come because they assumed nothing had changed. Heads turned toward the quiet table. Those three classmates stared at Jason, startled, as if he'd pulled a spotlight from his pocket and gently shone it on them. Jason continued. I came because I wanted them to see something different. I wanted them to know that the story doesn't end in the cafeteria. It doesn't end in the hallway or by your lockers or with your laughter. He turned to the whole room. And I wanted you. His gaze swept across Melissa, Mark, the old cheerleaders, the ex-football players, the ones who'd made the rules, to see what it looks like when someone you wrote off decides their life belongs to them, not to your labels. A quiet murmur of guilt rippled through the crowd. A few people wiped their eyes. Melissa looked away, cheeks burning. Jason stepped back from the microphone. I could leave it there, he said. I could walk out, let the shock stew, and sleep just fine tonight. He paused. But that wouldn't change anything. He glanced at the organizer, who watched with wary curiosity. So here's what I'm going to do instead, Jason said. I will personally fund a scholarship program for students who come from families like mine. Kids who work nights, who clean classrooms, who get laughed at for wearing the same clothes each week. Gasps. I'll name it after my parents, he added. They gave me everything they didn't have. They believed in me when no one else did. His voice thickened slightly at the edges. And as for this class, he went on, straightening, I'm covering the cost of tonight's reunion for everyone seated at that back table. All eyes swung to the quiet trio again. They stared at him, stunned. One of them, the woman with the anxious eyes, shook her head quickly. No, Jason, you don't have to. I know, he said, but I want to. He turned back to the room. As for the rest of you, he added calmly, you can pick up your own tabs. You can afford it. A faint, almost reluctant chuckle rolled through the hall. It wasn't revenge. It was balance. The people who'd always had everything could pay for their own wine and catered meals. The ones who'd always had nothing finally got something, no strings attached. The organizer stepped forward, clearly moved. Jason, that's incredibly generous, he said. Thank you. Jason nodded once and stepped away from the podium. As he descended the stage steps, people approached him slowly, hesitantly, the way you might approach a wild animal D once poked with sticks. Daniel, the quiet one, was first. Jason, he said softly, I never defended you back then. I just watched. That makes me part of it. I'm sorry. Jason looked him in the eyes. That took courage to say, he replied. Try using that courage earlier next time. Daniel nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. Next was a woman who used to sit at Melissa's table, Veronica, the former cheerleader. She twisted her bracelet, eyes red. We were awful, she whispered. I still remember the day we put gum on your chair and laughed when you didn't notice. My daughter is 7 now. If anyone ever did to her what we did to you. Her voice cracked. Jason softened. You can't change what happened, he said, but you can raise her differently. Veronica nodded, shoulders shaking. Melissa hovered nearby, trying to decide whether to approach. Eventually, she forced herself forward. Jason, she began, her tone shaky but still laced with pride, I guess. Congratulations are in order. You proved us wrong. Jason watched her carefully. Did I? He asked. She frowned. You're successful, you're rich. Isn't that proving us wrong? He shook his head slightly. No, Melissa. Proving you wrong would mean I lived my whole life just to spite you. I didn't. I built my life because I wanted something better for myself, not because I wanted less for you. She blinked. If anything, he added, I proved me wrong, the version of me who believed you were right. Melissa opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her shoulders dropped. I was cruel, she admitted quietly. We were all cruel. I don't have an excuse. No, Jason said gently, you don't. Her eyes watered. Is there anything I can do, she asked, to, I don't know, make it even? Jason thought for a moment. There's a letter writing program, he said, for kids who get bullied. You can volunteer, write to them, listen to them, believe them when they say it hurts. It won't erase the past, but it might stop another kid from carrying the weight I did. Melissa nodded slowly. I'll do it, she whispered. I hope you mean that, Jason replied. After an hour of strained conversations and timid apologies, Jason stepped outside to breathe. The night air was cool. The helicopter sat quietly on the lawn, its blades still. He loosened his tie and looked up at the stars. He heard footsteps behind him. It was one of the 3 classmates whose dinner he'd covered, the woman with short hair and anxious eyes. She approached cautiously. Jason, she said, can I talk to you for a second? He turned to face her. Of course. My name's Eva, she said. I don't know if you remember me. I used to sit alone in the art room at lunch. Jason nodded. You drew on the covers of your textbooks. Her eyes widened. You remember that? He smiled. I remember people better than I remember equations. She laughed softly, a little embarrassed. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. For paying for dinner, you didn't have to. I know, he said, but I remember how it feels to watch the bill go around and wonder if your card will decline. She swallowed. That obvious, huh? Only to someone who's been there, he replied. She hesitated. It's been rough since graduation. My dad got sick and I never finished college. I work at a print shop now. It's fine, but I thought coming tonight would make me feel like a failure. Jason tilted his head. Does it? She looked back toward the glowing windows of the hall, at the people inside suddenly grappling with their own reflections. No, she said slowly. Actually, for the first time I feel like maybe being quiet didn't mean I lost. Maybe we just took a different route. He nodded. Success isn't a single road, he said. It's a city full of streets. Some people inherit the highway. The rest of us learn to build our own path brick by brick. She looked at him gratefully. Do you ever feel angry, she asked, at them, at all of this? Jason thought for a moment. I used to, he admitted. I thought revenge would taste sweet, but the truth is it's just empty. Standing up there telling the truth, that felt better than watching any of them squirm. Eva smiled. I'm glad you came, she said, not for their sake, for ours. So am I, Jason replied. A beat of comfortable silence settled between them. Then Eva asked shyly, do you really fund scholarships? I do. For kids like us. For kids who feel like the world already wrote them off, he said. I want them to know the story can be edited. She blinked back sudden tears. Maybe one day I'll send you an application, she joked weakly. Jason smiled. Maybe one day you'll help read them, he countered. You see things in people most others ignore. She looked at him surprised. Think about it, he said. Eva nodded slowly. I will. The night wound down. Inside, the reunion limped toward its conclusion. The glossy image of perfection cracked, the old hierarchy shaken. No one dared call anyone a loser anymore. Not when the original loser had just paid for strangers' dinners and funded scholarships, while the so-called winners wrestled with their own regrets. Jason shook a few last hands, offered a few last nods, then headed toward the helicopter. As he climbed in, Tom looked over his shoulder from the pilot's seat. How'd it go? He asked. Jason buckled his belt, gazing out at the shrinking figures on the lawn, people who had once towered over him emotionally, now looking very small. It went the way it needed to, he said. Did you show them? Tom asked with a smirk. Jason thought about it. The helicopter blades began to spin, kicking up wind and loose grass. I didn't show them a thing, he said quietly. I just let them see who I always was. Tom nodded, understanding more than Jason said. The helicopter lifted off, rising above the estate, above the manicured lawns and carefully crafted image of success. Through the window, Jason saw Melissa step out of the hall, shielding her hair from the wind as she looked up. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the distance. She raised a tentative hand. He gave a small nod. Not forgiveness. Not condemnation. Just acknowledgement. Then the estate shrank beneath them, swallowed by the growing darkness. Jason leaned back in his seat, loosening his tie fully now, feeling lighter than he had in years. He had gone back to the past, not to live in it, but to make peace with the boy who once walked those halls wondering if he'd ever matter. Now he knew. He mattered long before the money, the suits, or the helicopter. He mattered the moment he refused to believe their definition of him. Down below, somewhere, another kid walked home from school with cruel words rattling in their chest. Jason hoped somehow tonight's story would reach them. To whisper, they don't get to decide who you become. You do. And for the first time in a long time, Jasonstatham closed his eyes. Not to escape the past, but to finally rest in the life he had built beyond it.